It's Meghann Thee back with another video to explain what exactly Cardi B was talking about when she said this.
Great lawyers from my team to everybody was just amazing. It was a very interesting case, and I feel like everybody learned a lot.
That was last October, and that was right in front of the Orange County Federal Courthouse, my stomping grounds. I've covered so many trials there, and I covered the civil case against Cardi B from a man who was suing her over the cover to her first mixtape, Gangsta Bitch Music Volume 1. This was a likeness misappropriation and false light case from a guy named Mike Brophy, who was accusing Cardi of taking a portion of his tattoo, his distinct back tattoo, and superimposing it onto a male model in her album. And basically when you see this cover here, the back tattoo on the model, the guy was saying, this is my tattoo. That they had taken his distinct tattoo and put it on this album in such a way that people who knew him and knew his distinct tattoo could look at this album and think it was him. So his claims alleged that she was misappropriating his likeness and then also portraying him in a false light by making people think that he was this person performing oral sex on Cardi B. This was a lawsuit that went on for 6 years. It kind of just stalled in pretrial litigation, finally went to trial, and he soundly lost. The jury came back within 90 minutes and rejected him. But his lawyers didn't give up on it. They had a motion for new trial, and that was actually just resolved this week. There was an agreement announced Monday night, and then the judge signed off on it Tuesday. And the guy is going to pay Cardi $350,000, and that's for her attorney fees. And then he's withdrawing his motion for new trial. So the jury verdict will stand. The $350,000 does not cover her attorney fees, like in the slightest. I don't know what exactly her attorney fees would be, but I'm sure it's in the millions. This had been going on for a long time. She had been paying a lawyer in Santa Monica for some pretrial stuff, but he actually had health problems and had a health scare right before the case was supposed to go to trial. So the judge really reluctantly delayed the trial and ordered Cardi to get new lawyers. So then she went out and got Davis, Wright, and Tremaine, which she was probably better off with these guys. They worked with her lawyer, Lisa Moore, who's based in Atlanta and is actually the lawyer who tried the defamation lawsuit against YouTuber Tasha K and won a big verdict on that. Lisa is obviously close with Cardi, and she came out from Atlanta for the trial in Santa Ana and sat at the defense table with Cardi. But most of the actual questioning of witnesses was done by Peter Anderson and then Jonathan Siegel of Davis, Wright, and Tremaine, which is a pretty prominent First Amendment law group. They do a lot of work with members of the media. One of their partners, Kelly Sager, is really famous in journalism circles, LA journalism circles, for sticking up for press rights. But Peter Anderson is a really well-known music lawyer. He's done stuff for Taylor Swift, Led Zeppelin, that kind of thing. But he stepped in and did most of the trial for Cardi. He did opening and closing arguments. So I can't imagine it was cheap. But the point of the settlement and it was a stipulation basically to pay the attorney fees and withdraw the motion for new trial. While it doesn't cover all her attorney fees, it definitely ends a case that has long been a source of irritation to her, I'd say, for the least. It's overall a big win for Cardi, and it's also a really interesting look at First Amendment law as it applies to art and transformative art, which was the defense on this. That I think some people see this and think, well, if it's a portion of his tattoo or if it's some of his tattoo, doesn't he have a case? But the key is it wasn't a copyright claim. It's not like his tattooist had a copyright on this image and then they went and used the image for commercial purposes and the tattooist sued for copyright. It was a likeness misappropriation and false light case, and that they were trying to get the jury to believe that people could seriously be confused and think that this was actually Mike Brophy. Graphic designer Tim Gooden actually testified that he used an actual picture of Brophy's tattoo. It was a portion of Brophy's tattoo in a picture he'd found on the internet, and just saw it when he was out surfing the internet and incorporated it into his graphic design, his alteration of this photo of Cardi and the male model in the backseat of the car, with the male model appearing to perform oral sex on her, and Cardi's got the bottle of Corona. And he testified that he didn't use every single part of the tattoo, but he did use some of it. And one memorable part of his testimony was he was very insistent that it didn't appear that the man was performing oral sex on Cardi, because the man's face was obviously in her stomach. He was steadfast in that testimony. But his testimony about what he used and what he didn't use from the tattoo was significant. There's actually a "born to lose" phrase written on Mike Brophy's back that's part of that tattoo that was not included on the male model. So, I mean, it was almost kind of a bad omen for what was going to happen with this lawsuit, because he definitely lost it. And then after the verdict, the judge ended up backing the jury through his rejection of a motion for judgment that Mike Brophy's lawyers had sought. They had wanted the judge to step in and basically throw out the jury verdict and say, no, the law is in Mike Brophy's favor and Cardi loses. And he wouldn't do that. And he said it was untimely, but he also did rule on the merits of the case, you'll see here, and issued a pretty strong ruling in Cardi's favor, and even cited her own testimony about the purpose of it. You'll see he called it a larger visual commentary on sexual politics. The judge continued, he said, Brophy's tattoo was but one tattoo on the back of the model, who was himself but one part of a suggestive portrayal of a man with his head between Cardi B's legs, while she was in the back seat of a vehicle and drank an alcoholic beverage. The purpose, Cardi B testified, was to show her in control, reversing traditional gender roles. And that was basically what Cardi said in her own testimony. I got to see her testify, and she said on the witness stand, she tells the jury, I wanted an image to be like, I'm in control. Usually men are in control. I'm in control. The roles are reversed. This is her explaining why she wanted the cover to Gangsta Bitch Music Volume 1 to look the way it does. And she says, I'm not literally receiving oral in real life. It's artwork. So after the judge rejects Brophy's request for a direct judgment and issues that ruling about a larger visual on commentary on sexual politics, you'd think it was over, but his lawyers tried again in a motion for new trial, basically arguing that they weren't given a fair shot to present their case to the jury. And a lot of their motion focused on restrictions that the judge had placed on Brophy's lawyers' questioning of Cardi, because things had gotten a little testy during there. Cardi was definitely sticking up for herself and holding her own on the witness stand. And Brophy's lawyer, Barry Capello, I think Barry Capello was just really hoping that the Orange County jury would really not like Cardi. But it's like, no, actually, there's a reason she's an international superstar with like tens of millions of followers. You know, another reporter remarked to me that she has this rare charisma where she can just hold a room and walk into a room and everybody is kind of infatuated with her. And it's just a rare quality to find in a human being. And I think Cardi really exemplified that in her testimony, although it definitely is a matter of opinion on who was really out of line in the questioning. I think Judge Carney kind of showed through his restrictions on Barry Capello that he thought it was Barry, but Barry made really clear in this motion for new trial that he thinks it's Cardi who was the one who was out of line. They write, it was clear that Cardi had no interest in answering the question posed and instead engaged in a variety of theatrics. Almanzar refused to answer simple questions, repeatedly veered off topic, and disclosed privileged and confidential mediation communications. In an attempt to restrain Almanzar's theatrics and encourage her to answer questions being posed, plaintiff's counsel asked her to respect the time of the jury and everyone in the courtroom. And this was right before Carney called the break, because it was really getting, it seemed like he was kind of badgering the witness, Capello, to Cardi B at this point. But this is Capello after the fact defending his approach to Cardi, and he said defendant's counsel responded with an objection to that admonishment and an accusation. I mean, this is counsel's party, and this is what he's doing. The court sustained the objection, and plaintiff's counsel responded, "It's not my party if it's coming from there. That's canned testimony." And so it was just this back and forth, that you can just imagine how the jury was taking this. And this is when Judge Carney ordered the jury out of the room and talked to the attorneys about, okay, what are we going to do here? Because it was just beginning, the questioning of Cardi was just kind of, beyond the point of control, and he wanted to get things back on track. So that's when he issued the 30-minute limit on Capello, and then Lisa Moore, who's Cardi's lawyer from Atlanta, the one who did the Tasha K case, got up after Barry and started questioning her. And of course, it was a lot different of a tone than Capello took. She was trying to show everybody how Cardi had built her career, and how she built her own success, because of course part of Brophy's argument for why he should receive some kind of damages and some kind of portion of the profits from Gangsta Bitch Music Volume 1 was claiming that his tattoo and the success of the art on her mixtape cover is what propelled her career. So he was thinking that he needed some kind of portion of that, which Cardi made clear she was really offended by. So Lisa's questions were all aimed at, obviously portraying Cardi in a positive light and just showing how she'd built her career and where she came from. And I'm sure just Lisa knows that if she just kind of lets Cardi go, Cardi can be pretty charming. So she was asking her about her background, and Cardi was talking about how she grew up poor in the Bronx. And I learned a lot from this. I don't think she really said anything new that, fact-wise, that hasn't been out there for years for people who are big fans of her, but she definitely said it in like new ways, and it was just so fun to get to sit there and listen to her answer questions like that. But she said she was talking about the Bronx, and she said, "To me, the ghettos and hoods of California, it looks glamorous to me." She was basically saying that the hoods in California have nothing on the hoods in the Bronx where she's from. She said, "The Bronx is dirty and gray, and my neighborhood was very dangerous." But she said she didn't like to go outside after 9 p.m. because one time she did, and a rat ran across her foot. She's like, "That's how dirty and disgusting it is." She said, "No matter how clean your apartments are, it's just the Bronx. It's the hood." And Cardi's father was a cab driver, and her mother was a cafeteria lady. She said, "I have a very large family from both sides. We have always stick together no matter what. There has always been there." She said, "There has been a couple of deaths in my family, and we just get closer and closer." And she referenced Offset. I was hoping before the trial that maybe Offset would go to the trial with her to like show support, but he wasn't anywhere around the courthouse for the 4 days. But she said that she currently lives in a house, and so many people live with us. She said 2 aunts and 4 cousins, and then there's her 2 kids with Offset. And then she said, and it was cute, she said, "And when his kids come, they come. We were just a close-knit family." She was really, really charming the jury up there. But she was saying that, now that she's famous, she really needs her family around her just for peace of mind, and that her family brightens her day. And then Lisa got into asking her about her kids, and she said they're 1 and 4. And then Lisa was asking about her religious background. She said, "Did you grow up in a religious household, Cardi?" And Cardi said, "Yes, I grew up in a religious household, and it was always kind of confusing to me. Her father was Catholic and her mother was Christian." And she said, "Now that I'm a grown-up, I'm not like a traditional religious person, as in I don't go to church, but I have a very strong belief in God, and I always put that message out there." She's talking about her music. And she said she feels like God has helped her. She said, "I have put the work in, but I feel like God has done the miracles. I always like to push that to people." And then this was probably one of my favorite moments of trial, if not my favorite moment, definitely my favorite moment of her testimony. But she looked around the courtroom and looked at the jury, and she's like, "Sorry if anyone is atheist here, but he is real." So Lisa's questions were, of course, pretty defensive for Cardi. And then not only did Judge Carney, limit the Capello to 30 minutes, he then didn't let him get up and ask more questions after Lisa had done her exam. So there was all this material came in that he didn't get to cross-examine Cardi on. But so he was making the argument in this motion for new trial that was going to be a problem. But to me, it just seemed obvious that this was dead in the water. The idea that, if he'd just been able to cross-examine Cardi B a little bit more about that, or ask her this or something, that there would have been a different verdict, I think is hard to believe. And Judge Carney basically said that in his ruling back in December about the visual commentary on sexual politics. He said in here that he didn't think there was any way the jury could think that the tattoo played any role in the success of the album, and that the cover is about so much more than that. Still, there was this motion for new trial pending. So it ended up spurring this mediation and negotiation between the lawyers that ended Monday night with them filing the stipulation saying they're going to withdraw the motion for new trial, and Cardi will get $350,000 for attorney fees. And then the case is over. And then you'll see the judge signed it on Tuesday. So that ends the case. And man, it really brought back some memories for me, because this was such a great trial to cover. It brought larger crowds to the courthouse every day, as I say in here, including a teenager who, there was a high school across the street, so there were a ton of teenagers everywhere, but there was this guy who had a sign asking her to homecoming. Tristan is his name, and he was really committed to it, and she thought it was cute. She retweeted my tweet on that, and they were all running into the lobby one morning because it was Friday morning, and apparently their homecoming was that night. And Cardi would show up every morning with her security guard, and he was always a little not sure about all the crowds. You know, he's her security guard. And Lisa, her lawyer, you can see her here negotiating with Tristan about, he was explaining his position to her, and he wanted to be able to see Cardi and show her the sign and everything. And
well, you can tell her.
You guys do me a favor, okay? Do me a favor. Her security's gonna freak out if he sees everybody like this. So can you guys like stay on one side? He's gonna get really, really nervous, and then he's gonna make her go a different way where you won't be able to see her. If he pulls up and he sees this.
Thank you.
And I was just thinking to myself that, you know, the idea that Cardi wouldn't like this, that she wouldn't enjoy it and think it's cute, and in the end they're just high school kids. These are the kind of people that she wouldn't mind seeing. It's, you can see the security concerns, but they're just harmless high school kids. They're high schools across the street from the courthouse. So Lisa was talking to them about how they needed to kind of disperse and not be a big crowd, because the security guard would see it when they drove up and then take Cardi in through the back entrance. So the kids were like trying to be good. I could hear Tristan like negotiating with his friends, telling him, you know, don't screw this up for me. But then Cardi's guy ended up doing that anyway. They went through the side entrance, and we're all waiting there being like, oh, are they going to be late for court? What's going on? And then everybody realizes what happened, that they'd taken her in the side entrance. So all the kids all of a sudden go running into the courthouse, which was crazy. And they've all got their cameras out and they're filming and stuff, which is of course not allowed in the courthouse. And the security guards were just like kind of stunned with the whole thing, but they were all the kids were all shouting at Cardi, trying to get her attention. It only lasted maybe like 30 seconds. They all ran out because security was like pushing them out. But you can't stop the crowds like that. It just shows what a draw she is. The case was also against her old management company, the management company that she had in the very beginning. So Shaft, he's still around, but I thought Shaft was like super, super cool. He testified, and to this day, he's probably one of my favorite people to see testify on the witness stand, because he was just like cucumber cool the entire time, and very funny. And there was like a plot twist in it, because he'd been involved in hip hop for so long, and promotion, and knew all about music, but he was actually a former executive at JP Morgan. So, I mean, he had this like whole life experience that was really interesting to learn about, but he had the background on how the album was designed and why they had that pose, that kind of thing. And I can't remember why he was asking him this, but Larry Conlon was asking Shaft about why he was giving it away for free, why they would do this promo deal on the mixtape. And he's like, because I want everybody to hear Cardi B. And he's like, is it because you want her popularity to blow up? It's like, well, yeah, that seems obvious. But Shaft was like, no, because I want everybody to hear Cardi B. It's her first mixtape, and I want the world to hear Cardi B. So Conlon's like, it's publicity, isn't it? Giving it away for free? Shaft says, everything's publicity. I made sure that they had access to hear her music. So Conlon's asking Shaft if, as the owner of Cardi's record label, your hope was that this was going to get people's attention. And Shaft's like, that wasn't my hope. She was already a star. Conlon's like, but she'd never released any music before. Shaft's like, I wanted to make sure that everybody had access to Cardi B. It was just like kind of this back and forth, but I remember thinking that Conlon was kind of losing his cool more than Shaft was. So during the questioning of Shaft by Cardi's lawyers, he actually got like super emotional and could like barely continue. He was like breaking down on the witness stand when he was talking about her success. First he was talking about why he went into music and why it's important to his worldviews. And he's like, he said, why I went into music is because music is the only form that will change and bring love into the world, like change the world and bring love into the world. And he was fighting back tears and struggling to keep his composure. He said, I know with music, I can control people and I can bring love into the world. That's why I'm in the music industry. And that's why everybody asks Shaft. Then he just kind of stopped and he's like halting and broken testimony. He's like, ladies and gentlemen, I can't do it. He was talking to the jury and I think kind of talking to everybody in the courtroom, but he said, I had help. Every single rap girl takes 10 years. He was talking about Cardi's success, but she made it in 3 years. Incredible. But I remember it was more than just emotional. He was just like, incredible, that kind of stuff. Like he said, I didn't do it. I'm just the manager. I cleared the path and she's number one. And it was very like resonating in the courtroom. It was like, wow, like Shaft's like laying it down up there for sure. But Cardi at the time was sitting at the front defense table next to Lisa Moore, and I could see Lisa like kind of looking at Cardi, like giving her a smile as Shaft was saying this, because it was it was obviously very complimentary of Cardi, but you could tell it was just like so genuine, because it wasn't just like, oh, Cardi's a talented artist. It was like talking about like everything she's achieved and just like how monumental it is and everything she had to go through to get there, just like the work that she did to go in, and just like kind of the phenomenal success that she had. It was powerful stuff. I remember like just being like, wow, I knew who Cardi B was before, and of course, everybody who doesn't like Cardi B, right? But I didn't know all that much about her, but I just came away from this trial being like, oh wow, she really built her career. And she talked about that in her own testimony. I've talked about growing up in the ghetto in New York City, getting kicked out of her mom's house, working at a grocery store, going and being a stripper, and then just like she just started her own social media following and love and hip hop and everything, and just how everything came from there. I think, according to my notes, Shaft and Cardi met when Cardi was dancing, and he was managing DJ Self at the time. And he said that she was already famous, and she's like, oh my God, I'm getting all the DMs and people asking her to promote stuff. And she wanted just guidance and kind of assistance on just managing those huge numbers, and said, I don't know how to do it. Can you help me? And Shaft was like, yeah, let's go. He said, me being from a Caribbean background, he said he had to ask his mother how she would feel about him going from, JP Morgan to managing a dancer. And he said, then I took a chance and we did it and I helped. She's here today. She was a star before she came to me. I just cleared the path. But Shaft remembered her trending on Twitter because people were asking why she wasn't on an episode of Love and Hip Hop. And he spoke to someone at 1 a.m. who asked him, how much do you want for Cardi? And he said $10,000 an episode. And he's like, so this young lady, for the first time on TV, $10,000 an episode, 12 weeks, unheard of. Shaft said that Meek Mill's lawyer said he'd never seen that kind of pay. And Shaft says, from that point on, she was America's darling. So that was probably one of the highlights of the trial for sure, just Shaft's presence in the courtroom. But of course, everybody was excited when Cardi testified. I remember we were sitting in the other reporters and I, and we didn't know for sure when she was going to take the stand, and it happened in the afternoon. And Gina, my friend who works at Law 360, was like, oh, she's like kind of like grabbing me and stuff. We're like getting stoked. I'm like pulling out my laptop, getting ready to live tweet it and everything, and got pretty good response on the live tweet. This was before the Tory Lane stuff, so I didn't have the huge following that I got with that, but that was like the first trial that I'd gotten really big numbers on, other than way bigger than the Michael Illuminati guy that had been covering. So I had a pretty big following when Cardi took the stand, and a lot of people were following along. But it was really cool to hear Cardi talk about how she got her career start. She talked about getting kicked out of her mom's house and working at a supermarket as she lived with her boyfriend and enrolled in community college. And she said that she was practically making like $200 a week, and things started to get really rocky with my ex-boyfriend. He started beating my ass constantly. He'd get annoyed by certain things and be controlling. And she testified, I just felt like I was in a serious abusive relationship, but she didn't feel like she could go home, and she wanted to show her mom that I'm strong and it's okay and I got this shit. So she had a job at the supermarket, but my tweet on this is funny. You can see the typo here, but it's like there was something about her getting fired and a Turkish man telling her she should go be a stripper, and the supermarket just happened to be across the street from a strip club. So she went over there, and she said she was making $250 a week at the supermarket, and all of a sudden at the strip club she made $300 in a couple of hours. So she started dancing and eventually got her own apartment. And so for an 19-year-old, she said that was a big deal. And she said, quote, "I was just happy to get out of my ex-boyfriend's home. I was just happy." And so Lisa then gets into her following before she got into the mixtape, just her popularity and social media following. And Cardi was talking about how she got a lot of followers when she started appearing on Love and Hip Hop, and that every episode that aired, it felt like she was getting hundreds of thousands of followers more, and she knew she could use her platform to promote herself as an artist. So it was the right opportunity to follow my dreams, she said. I'm going to start putting music out. I have this huge platform. And at this point, she said, I didn't have music out, but they just wanted to see me. So she said, I was hot. I had it going on. Like, and she was it was very cool to like just sit in the back row of the gallery with the other reporters and like listen to her testify. But it probably didn't last more than an hour, Lisa's exam of Cardi, and then Shaft was on after her. And another witness was Tim Hendricks, the tattooist who actually inked Brophy's back tattoo, and he was the one who alerted Brophy to Cardi B's album. There was a text message that was entered as evidence that said, hey, unless you grew hair, is this you? And actually Cardi pointed out in her testimony that right there shows that nobody was actually confused that this really was Brophy, that even the guy who first saw it, Hendricks, knew that it wasn't him in the very beginning, because part of the likeness misappropriation claim is that there's a serious risk, or it's happening a lot. People are actually getting confused about there's examples of confusion in the consumer market or just in the public, and Brophy didn't seem to have any examples like that. And Cardi's lawyer Peter Anderson had pointed out in his closing that really he seems to live a very nice life. He works for that company RVCA, who, especially in Southern California, you'll see a bunch of people wearing RVCA shirts and stuff. It's like a surfing lifestyle company, but he travels around the world to like exotic locations for his job, and he's got a wife and 2 kids, and they live in Costa Mesa. And Peter Anderson's point was he really doesn't seem to be suffering at all because of this. So he was really just kind of almost mocking the case in his closing, not outright, but I mean, I thought he had good points though, just about how this is a federal courtroom, a serious lawsuit, but the evidence that was presented just wasn't adding up to kind of the dire circumstances that the lawyers had painted in their opening and closing, and then that Brophy had described on the stand. I mean, him describing as a digital molestation, and his wife had testified to that, she notices the stress on him and that he has, trouble sleeping and that kind of thing. And it was just like, really, is that believable? And obviously for the jury, it wasn't. They came back in 30 minutes with the full defense verdict, and this was in the afternoon after closings I thought went on way too long. I couldn't believe that the judge didn't put any kind of time restrictions on closing, so the lawyers just talked forever. And of course Cardi was super excited after she won. She and the jury forewoman embraced in the well of the court, and I could hear him being like, "Oh, I'm never gonna forget you." And she and Cardi B and Brophy actually talked too. Brophy approached her and was like, at the the end of the day, I have respect for you as an artist. And she was like, maybe you get to know me, like get to know me first. And Cardi was trying to be nice to him, but Brophy said something like, oh, and we know the same people. And she was like, oh, really? Who? And he did name someone that it sounded like she had recognized him, but she was saying like, oh, I just didn't know if I didn't try, I wouldn't, I'd never know. But I didn't, I could tell that he didn't want her to think that he was like personally after her, or thought that she was like after him or malicious or something. But it's like, well, you did sue her. But to have that happen and then have him not just accept the loss was, I think that was just the lawyers filing the motion for judgment and then the motion for new trial. And then part of it could have been negotiations over Brophy not wanting to pay all of Cardi's attorney fees, because I'm sure that'd be a lot. And, you know, I'm not sure that's something Cardi was looking to do, like completely like wreck him financially or something from that. So I think the agreement was a good way for them to resolve things. But Shaft and Cardi, who I'd read online that, you know, he's her former manager. So I think there obviously were some kind of issues unrelated to the lawsuit there. But I think this case kind of brought them together again, or I hope it did, because they were celebrating together in the hallway afterward. Shaft actually posted this reel here on his Instagram. Let's check it out.
Queens.
Bro, Shaft, you know I hate you. Let me stop.
Flawless victory. Hello.
Afterward, she goes outside, and of course it's prime time for school to be let out, because the judge hadn't put time limits on the closing arguments, so it just stretched on forever, and it gets out right when the school's getting out. So there's this huge herd of teenagers like looking through the windows, like trying to figure out where Cardi is, and they completely mobbed her afterward. And she was doing a press conference, but me and the other reporters who'd watched the whole trial were upset because we got like pushed out of the whole thing, and these high school kids just kind of took over. But I got a little bit of a shot of her here, but you can see an actual literal walking mob.
Cardi, can you pay for my tuition, please?
I don't know if you could hear it real well, but my friend Gina, the reporter at Law 360, mutters, "This is so stupid," as she walks by. So nobody got hurt, miraculously, but it was a pretty memorable 4 days at the Ronald Reagan Federal Building and Courthouse. Tristan, the young Tristan who was trying to get Cardi to go to homecoming with him, never succeeded. But I did a couple months ago. I was at the 4th Street Market, which is just up from the courthouse in Santa Ana. And this kid came up to me. He's like, "Excuse me, ma'am." And I looked at him. I went, "Oh, Tristan, how are you?" He totally recognized me and came up and said hi. He was there with his friends, and I took a picture of him there. So Tristan will go on to do good things in life, I know. So it was, like I said, a memorable trial at the Ronald Reagan Federal Building and Courthouse, and just the fact that it was only 4 days was kind of like, is this even real? I remember the next week I was like, was that a dream? Was that real? But all the post trial litigation reminded us that no, it was definitely real. Lawyers exist, and they're still going at it. So the resolution that was announced Monday and then that Judge Carney signed on Tuesday ends an era for Cardi B and Kevin Brophy, and I think especially her lawyers, or not her lawyers, but his lawyers for sure. Took a big L on this one, that's for sure. But glad I was able to cover the trial. Glad I was able to sum it all up for you. I've got a story online at legalaffairsandtrials.com. I covered the entire trial for Law and Crime News, but a lot of my coverage is shepherded into the story that's on legalaffairsandtrials.com, and I've got links to everything else on there. So hey, thank you so much for tuning in. Give me a subscription, like me, give me a comment, all that good stuff. Check out my website, subscribe there, and tell others about my YouTube channel. Thanks, and see you next time.